Hi, I'm Beth, creator of dryitcanit.com. I like to share tips and tricks for dehydrating food, canning food, as well as share original recipes that I put together. Today, I want to talk about dehydrating potatoes. Potatoes are a great thing to have in your pantry normally, but they're also really nice to have either canned or dehydrated, and today I'm going to dehydrate them. So, I prefer to work with a yellow potato. I find they work the best. Russet potatoes work, red potatoes work, I just prefer the yellow. So the process is really simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to peel my potatoes, I'm going to slice them or cube them depending upon how I want to use them. I'm actually going to cube them today. And then I'm going to soak them in cold water for several hours, changing the water, because what that does is it removes the starches. Then I'm going to cook the potatoes for a little bit, because if you don't cook your potatoes a little bit, they actually turn black during dehydrating. And then I'm going to dehydrate them, and then I'll show you how I use them on the back end. So let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is you want to peel your potato. Now when I'm doing a lot of vegetables, I tend to use shortcuts, and I use a potato peeler, which actually works great for apples also, or other fruits. Sometimes I'll use it for orange rind, for example. And I save my potato skins. Even if you're doing your potatoes by hand, save the skins and dehydrate these, because you can make potato powder out of those. Potato powder is a great thickener for soups or chilies or casseroles. So anyway, I take my potato, I remove the skin. Usually this potato peeler does not quite get the edges, so I just do kind of a turn and get those, and then I'll just put those in there until I peel all of them. So I'm going to, well, I'll show you how I do the rest of these then. So once I get these done, I basically slice them into, because I'm doing cubes, I want to slice them into maybe about a half inch thick. And then I put them in my chopper, because it's the quickest way to get them done, and give it a good pound and get my potatoes diced really quickly, but more importantly for even size. That's really important when you're dehydrating food. So you can see that I have these potatoes all diced nice and quickly and evenly, and I dump them in my water, so I start removing the starches. And already you can see where that water is starting to get cloudy from the starches. So I'm going to go ahead and prep the rest of my potatoes, and then I'll be back. All right, so obviously having a peeler and a chopper make pretty quick work of this. I'll have links to both of these below if you're interested. But I have my bowl of potatoes all diced, and you can see the water's, a bit cloudy from the starches coming out. So what I'm going to do is just let this sit for about 20 minutes or so, and then I'm going to drain it, rinse it really well, and then I'm going to put fresh water in it and let it sit for another 20 minutes. I'm going to do that 3 times, and I'm going to do that before I cook the potatoes. So once I have let these sit, really it's going to be an hour by the time all 3 times for 20 minutes, then I will get back to you and let you know, and that is just my canner finishing. So I will be back shortly, and then I'll tell you how long I cook these and next steps. My potatoes have been rinsed 3 times, and if I lift this up, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, or if I'm going to be able to lift it. You can see how much clearer this water is compared to where it was to start with. The water is fairly clear, and I have really nice chunks of potato, fairly even. Now, to be honest with you, I probably sliced these potatoes a little thicker than I should have, because some of these pieces are closer to 1 inch by maybe a ½ inch. And generally, you probably don't want the potato slices to be much more than about a ½ inch. So these are going to take some time to dehydrate, but they'll work nonetheless, and they are the size I really wanted, maybe just slightly bigger. So my next step is this. I have a pot of unsalted water on the stove now, and I'm bringing that to a boil. Once that's in a boil, I'm going to take these potatoes, I'm simply going to take them like this and drain them, and I'm going to put them in that pot of water. I'm going to let that water come back to a boil, I'm going to cover it, and then I'm going to cook these for 2 or 3 minutes. I don't want them all the way cooked, I want them maybe a half to 2/3 of the way cooked. And I'll pull a piece out and check it after about 2 minutes. Once that's done, I'm going to bring these back, I'm going to plunge them into cold water, and then into the dehydrator they go. So stay tuned. One other quick thing, so I did take all my peelings and I put them in cold water. I just rinsed this one other time, to be honest with you. And what I'm going to do with this is put these in the dehydrator also. And then when they're dry, I'm going to crush them, I'm going to grind them, and I'm going to have potato powder. That really gives me a gluten-free option as a thickener. Gluten isn't a problem in our family, but it might be in other families. But honestly, the potato flour is really good for thickening soups or casseroles. And our green gases oftentimes are created by food waste. So this is a nice way to use this up. We've also taken these after they've been dehydrated, salted them, and then just ate them. They were kind of good that way too. So that's what's going to happen next is I'm going to boil these for 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to partly cook them, rinse them, and I'll be back shortly. Here are the potatoes, almost ready to boil. This is still a simmer because the bubbles really aren't breaking. They're moving on top, but that's not a boil yet. It should be shortly though into boiling. And now we have a good boil. This is a hard boil, and I just will let this go for 2 minutes, and I'll drain the potato, a couple of pieces in cold water to check and see if they're done. The potatoes were definitely ready to go after 2 minutes. So after they boiled for 2 minutes, I drained them as quickly as I could and plunged them into cold water, rinsed them, put them into cold water again. That stops the cooking action. That's really what you want to do. So the pieces, technically, if I squeeze it, I can break it apart, and you really can't probably see, but it's still a little bit hard. It has just the slightest crunch to it. Like these wouldn't be ready for mashing yet. But that said, we're good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to put my potatoes ready on my dehydrator. You want something with a screen that's smaller than this because these pieces are going to shrink quite a bit. So I have a screen, a vented screen that I put on mine. And I'm just going to put these potatoes on here so that they are in a single layer so that they're not stacked. I'm not too worried about them, whether or not they're touching or not, because they're going to shrink and I'm going to move them around afterwards. So these potatoes are going to be great. The pieces are relatively large. So this is going to take quite a while, I think, to dehydrate. I'll probably have them in the dehydrator overnight. And once these are done, I will be back to show you. I'm going to put these in the dehydrator at 125 degrees. That's the temperature that generally you're going to use for vegetables. It's certainly what I recommend for these. Again, really important that you partially cook your potatoes, whether you're using slices or cubes, because most often they will turn dark if you don't do that. So stay tuned, and tomorrow I'll be back to show you the finished product. Here are the dehydrated yellow potatoes. They really look good. They're nice and yellow, no black. They kept the color really well. So these took about, let me think about this for a minute. These took about 20 hours to do because they were fairly big pieces. And at about 18 hours, I thought they were done because they were really hard. And I put a couple on a cutting board and really forced a knife through it. And I could see a little bit of what looked like raw potato on the inside. So I put them in for 2 more hours. And then I took some more after a couple hours and did it, and they're hard, so almost like a noodle. So I also took a couple pieces and I don't want to say rehydrated them because I actually cooked them. I'm going to put this on hold and come up and do a close-up of this. So these are raw potatoes when I started, so they're not really rehydrating, they're cooked. These are the dried ones, and they're dry, they're hard, they're crispy, and these are the ones that I cooked. And they're nice and they're soft. And it took about 20 minutes because you're in boiling water, because you're really rehydrating them first and then you're cooking them, because remember, they weren't cooked completely to start with. These work really well if you want to put them in soups or casseroles if there's enough liquid. If you're putting in a casserole and there's not a lot of liquid, I would go ahead and cook these first and then put them in the casserole. You could maybe cook them for, I don't know, this size piece it took about 20 minutes to cook in boiled water. It's going to depend on what size your potatoes are. So you're going to have to play with this for a little bit. But expect it to take a while because, again, you're rehydrating the potatoes and then you're cooking them. So the last thought I had is, if I took these couple of pieces, can I mash potatoes with them? So I have just those couple of pieces, and as I work them with a fork, I think I can. They mash up really easily. Now, obviously, I don't have milk or butter in these, which is traditional for mashed potato. But they have the texture of mashed potato. Now I have to say that I haven't actually done that before, but I'm going to because I think this works. So this was 5 cups of potatoes, diced to about inch by half an inch. It dehydrated down to about 3 cups of potatoes. You do want to keep track of your measurements to some degree, because if I was going to make a couple servings of these, I'd want to know how much I'm going to make. So anyway, that's dehydrating potatoes. Again, you can leave the skin on. I don't advise it because that skin becomes a barrier, so to speak, to get it fully dehydrated. I do think yellow potatoes work the best. Russet potatoes, white potatoes, they do work. They're just a little bit more watery when they're done, and I haven't tried red potatoes in this way. So if you felt like you learned something on this video, thumbs up on the video, then I know you like more how-tos. I would love if you subscribe to the channel, which I think is down in the lower left corner. There's a subscribe button, then you'll get notified every time I upload a video, and then you can choose to watch that video or not. But in the meantime, I thank you for watching. Happy dehydrating.